The mist in Lancaster County does not lift quickly. It clings to the hollows and the creek beds, wrapping the world in a blanket of white silence long before the sun crests the horizon. For the Stoltzfus family, this silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of God's presence, full of the expectation of labor, and full of the peace that comes from knowing exactly where you belong in the universe. Sarah Stoltzfus knew the rhythm of the dark better than she knew the shape of her own face in a mirror. Mirrors were vanity, after all, but the dark was functional. At 4:30 in the morning, the air in the farmhouse was cold, a damp chill that settled into the floorboards during the night. Sarah pulled the heavy quilt, stitched by her grandmother's hands 2 decades ago, away from her chin. The fabric was rough against her skin, a tactile reminder of the generations of women who had slept, worked, and prayed in this very room. She lit the kerosene lamp by her bedside. The flame sputtered, then caught, casting a dancing amber glow against the plaster walls. There were no posters, no pictures, no distractions, just a wooden peg on the wall where her dress hung, waiting. Sarah was 20 years old. In the English world, the world of electricity and noise that surrounded their quiet island of Faith, a 20-year-old woman would be in college, starting a career, perhaps traveling to distant cities. But here, Sarah was a daughter of the Ordnung. She was a teacher's aide at the one-room schoolhouse down the gravel lane, and she was unmarried. This fact hung over her mother's head like a storm cloud, though Sarah herself felt no rush. She dressed quickly. The layers were a shield. First the pins, securing the white prayer covering over her hair, which was parted in the center and twisted into a bun at the back of her head. The covering was a symbol of her submission to God and to man. Then the dress, a deep shade of blue, fastened with straight pins rather than buttons. Buttons were considered too decorative, too military, too worldly. Downstairs, the kitchen was already alive with the hushed sounds of morning. Her mother, Miriam, was slicing bread, the knife sawing rhythmically through the crust. Her father, Abram, was already out in the barn. Sarah could smell the coffee boiling on the wood stove, a sharp, bitter aroma that mingled with the scent of wood smoke and the faint, ever-present odor of livestock that clung to their boots. "Guten Morgen, Sarah," her mother said, not looking up from the bread. The Pennsylvania Dutch dialect rolled off her tongue soft and round. "Guten Morgen, mem," Sarah replied. She moved to the stove to stir the oatmeal. Life was good. Life was simple. But lately for Sarah, life felt tight. It felt like a dress that had shrunk in the wash. She found herself lingering too long looking at the sunsets, wondering how she would describe the specific shade of purple to someone who had never seen it. She found herself sketching with a piece of charcoal on the back of used feed receipts, hiding them in her apron pocket before her father came inside. The collision of worlds happened on a Tuesday. It was market day. Abram Stoltzfus had loaded the buggy with crates of sweet corn, tomatoes, and Miriam's shoofly pies. Sarah sat beside him, the rhythmic clip-clop of the horse's hooves on the asphalt acting as a metronome for her thoughts. They set up their stand near the edge of the highway, a place where the tourists the Englishers often stopped to gawk and buy fresh produce. Sarah stood behind the table, arranging the jars of chow-chow and pickled beets. She kept her eyes down, as she was taught. Hochmet pride came from the eyes. It came from looking too boldly at the world. Then a car pulled up. It wasn't a minivan full of tourists taking pictures with their phones. It was a silver sedan, dusty and battered. The engine cut, and the silence that followed felt heavy. A young man stepped out. He wore jeans and a t-shirt that looked worn. He didn't have a camera. He didn't look like a tourist. He looked tired. He walked toward the stand, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Good morning," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. Sarah looked up. He had dark hair, messy from the wind, and eyes that were the color of the creek water after a storm, gray and shifting. "Good morning," Sarah said, her voice small. "Would you like some corn?" "Tch, picked this morning." The man looked at the corn, then at the pies, and then finally he looked at Sarah. He didn't look through her the way most English did, seeing only the bonnet and the dress. He looked at her. "I'm actually lost," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was looking for the covered bridge, the one on the old map." "Zook's Mill Bridge?" Sarah asked. "I think so. I'm a photographer. Well, I used to be. I'm trying to find something real to look at." Sarah felt a strange flutter in her chest. Something real. "It is 2 miles down that road," she pointed with a flat hand. "Take the left fork at the big oak tree." "Thank you," he said. Didn't leave immediately. Bought a small fry pipe of land, ate it leaning against his car. He watched the fields. He watched the way the wind moved through the corn stalks. Sarah watched him watching the world. Most English people were always rushing. They bought their pie and ran back to their air-conditioned cars. This man stood still. "I'm Lucas," he said suddenly, turning back to her. Sarah froze. Names were personal. Interactions with the English were supposed to be transactional. "I am Sarah," she whispered, instantly regretting it. "Sarah," he repeated. "The light out here, it's different, it's softer." "It is just the sun," she said, trying to sound dismissive, trying to sound like her father. "No," Lucas smiled. A sad, crooked smile. "It's not just the sun. It's the way the land holds it." He got back in his car and drove away. Sarah watched the silver car disappear around the bend. She touched her apron pocket where a scrap of paper and charcoal lay hidden. The way the land holds the light, that was exactly what she had tried to draw yesterday. She felt a crack in the invisible wall that separated her from the world. A very small crack, but the light was already shining through it. In the weeks that followed, summer heat descended on Lancaster County like a heavy wool blanket. The humidity was thick enough to chew. The work did not stop. If anything, it intensified. There was hay to be cut, baled, and stored. There was canning to be done in the sweltering kitchen, steam rising from the giant pots of boiling water until the walls sweat. Lucas returned. He came back 3 days later, then the next week. He didn't always buy things. Sometimes he just parked near the edge of the property, sketching in a notebook, or setting up a tripod with an old-fashioned film camera. Sarah's father, Abram, was suspicious. "That English boy," he grumbled over dinner one night, spooning chicken pot pie onto his plate. "He loiters. He has no work. He's an artist at," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. Abram paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. The kerosene lamp cast deep shadows in the hollows of his face. "Art is not work, Sarah. It is idleness. It is chasing the wind. We work the earth because God gave us the earth. Pictures. Pictures are shadows. Pictures are shadows." The word stung Sarah. She thought of her charcoal drawings hidden beneath her mattress. Were they sins? Was capturing the beauty of a bird's wing an act of defiance against the Creator who made the bird? One Tuesday evening, Sarah was walking back from the schoolhouse. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and violet. She took the shortcut through the wooded patch near the creek, a place where the elders rarely went. Lucas was there, was sitting on a fallen log, his sketchbook open on his knees. He looked up as she approached, and he didn't look surprised. It was as if he had been waiting for the landscape to produce her. "I didn't mean to trespass," he said softly. Sarah stopped. She should keep walking. The Ordnung was clear about being unequally yoked with unbelievers. She should lower her head and pass by. But her feet felt rooted to the mossy earth. "What are you drawing?" she asked. Lucas turned the book around. It was a sketch of the old sycamore tree that leaned over the water. It was incredible. The shading, the texture of the bark, the way the branches seemed to reach out in desperation. "It is beautiful," Sarah breathed. "It's lonely," Lucas corrected her. "That's why I like it." He looked at her. "You have charcoal on your fingers, Sarah?" Sarah gasped and hid her hands behind her back. She had been drawing during her break at the schoolhouse. "Show me," he said. It wasn't a command, it was an invitation. Trembling, Sarah pulled a folded piece of brown butcher paper from her pocket. She handed it to him. It was a drawing of her father's hands holding the reins of the buggy. Rough, calloused, strong hands. Lucas studied it for a long time. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the chirping of crickets and the babble of the creek. "You have a gift," Lucas said finally. He looked at her with an intensity that made her flush. "Real talent? Do they let you do this?" "It is not." "Courage," Sarah admitted, looking at her black sturdy shoes. "It is seen as worldly. We are to focus on useful things." "Beauty's useful," Lucas said firmly. "Sarah, beauty's the only thing that makes sense in this world sometimes, where I come from. In the city, ... everything is loud. Everything is for sale. Here, you have silence. But if you can't express what you see in that silence, doesn't it choke you?" It was the most accurate description of her soul she had ever heard. Choking on the silence, they began to meet there. It was innocent at first, or so Sarah told herself. They talked about light and shadow. Lucas brought her pencils, real graphite pencils that glided over the paper like butter. He brought her a book of paintings by Andrew Wyeth. "He painted near here," Lucas explained. "He painted your world." "Look." Sarah looked at the images of dry fields, weathered barns, and lonely figures. She felt a profound sense of recognition. This was her life, seen through an outsider's eyes, and it was dignified. It was art. But with every meeting, the guilt grew. She was lying to her parents. She was lying to the bishop. When she sat in the 3-hour church service on alternating Sundays, sitting on the backless wooden benches, she felt the weight of her secret burning in her chest. The preacher spoke of separation from the world, of being a peculiar people, holy and set apart. "Am I holy?" Sarah wondered, glancing across the gender-segregated room at the men, at her father with his head bowed. "Or am I just hiding?" Lucas told her about his life. He was running from a high-pressure job in architecture that he hated. He was running from a family that wanted him to be rich, not happy. "I look at you, Sarah," Lucas said one evening, as the fireflies began to rise from the tall grass, "and I see someone who knows who she is. I envy that." "I am Sarah Stoltzfus," she said. "I am Amish. That is who I am, is it?" Lucas asked. He reached out and for the first time touched her hand. His skin was warm. The contact sent a shockwave through her body that was more powerful than any sermon she had ever heard. "Or is that just what you wear?" Sarah pulled her hand away, breathless. I have to go. It is milking time. She ran back through the woods, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She knew, with a terrifying clarity, that she was walking on the edge of a cliff. Sarah was 20, which meant she was technically in her Rumspringa years, the running around time. It was a period where Amish youth were allowed to test the boundaries of the world before making the lifelong commitment of baptism. Some of the boys bought cars and hid them in the woods. Some of the girls wore English clothes and went to the movies in town. But Sarah had never wanted that. She didn't want to drink beer or drive fast. She wanted to see. Lucas offered her a view. Come with me to Philadelphia, he urged her a week later, just for the day. There is an art museum. The stairs. You have to see the stairs. And the galleries. Sarah, there are Van Goghs. There are Monets. I cannot go to Philadelphia, Sarah whispered. They were standing behind the old tobacco shed, hidden from the house. It is too far. It's an hour and a half, Lucas said. We'll be back before your father finishes the evening chores. Please, just once. See what you're capable of. Here is the text separated into short paragraphs of approximately 3 to 4 lines each. Without removing any words, the temptation was not the city. The temptation was the art. It was the hunger to see the colors she had only dreamed of. She agreed. The deception required planning. She told her mother she was going to help a friend in the next district with a large quilting project. She changed into English clothes Lucas had bought for her jeans that felt stiff and alien, and a simple blue t-shirt. She took off her covering, her hair unpinned, fell down her back in waves that felt dangerously light. The drive was overwhelming. The speed of the car made her stomach turn. The music Lucas played, soft indie folk, was beautiful and complex. But the museum changed her molecular structure. Standing in front of a massive canvas of water lilies, Sarah wept. She stood in the center of the gallery, surrounded by strangers, and tears streamed down her face. She saw how the artist had used light. She saw that God was not just in the plow and the harvest. God was in the paint. You see it, don't you? Lucas whispered, standing close to her. I see it, she choked out. Why, why are we told this is wrong? How can beauty be a sin? It's not a sin, Sarah. It's just different. It's a different way of seeing. They ate lunch at a cafe. Sarah used a smartphone to take a picture of her latte art. She laughed, a sound that was free and uninhibited. For 6 hours, she was not Sarah Stoltzfus, the Amish girl. She was just Sarah. But the return trip was the descent back into reality. As they crossed the county line, the electric lights gave way to the darkness of the farmland. The dread returned. Lucas dropped her off a mile from the farm so she could change back into her plain clothes in the woods. I love you, he said. The words hung in the air of the car, heavy and absolute. Sarah looked at him. She looked at the English boy who saw her soul. I cannot, she stammered. She scrambled out of the car and ran into the trees. She fumbled with her buttons, her fingers shaking. She pinned her hair back up, shoving the wildness back under the white mesh. She put on the apron. She became the Amish girl again. But when she walked into the kitchen, the silence was different. It was sharp. Her father was sitting at the table. The Bible was open before him. Her mother was standing by the sink, her back turned, her shoulders shaking. Where were you, Sarah? Abram asked. His voice was not angry, it was hollow. I told you, Dad, I was at the miller's. I saw Levi Miller at the feed store, Abram said, not looking up from the scripture. His daughter is sick in bed. There was no quilting. Sarah froze. The air left her lungs. And Abram continued, turning a page slowly. Brother Yoder saw a silver car. He saw you get into it. The lie crumbled. There was no defense. Is he English? Mother asked, turning around. Her face was wet with tears. Sarah, is he of the world? He is a good man, Sarah defended, her voice rising. He showed me ... He showed me beauty, Dat. He showed me art. Abram slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He showed you the world. He showed you desire. Do you know what happens to those who love the world? The love of the Father is not in them. That is not true, Sarah cried. God made the world. Why can we not look at it? Because looking leads to wanting, Abram said, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. And wanting leads to leaving. And if you leave us. Forever. The days that followed were a nightmare of suffocation. Sarah was grounded. She was not allowed to leave the property. She was not allowed to work at the schoolhouse. Her father watched her like a hawk. The bishop came. Bishop Eli was a kind man, but he was iron when it came to the Ordnung. He sat in the parlor, his hat on his knee. Sarah, he said gently, we are not keeping you here against your will. You are not baptized yet. You have a choice. But you must understand the choice. If you choose this English boy, if you choose that life, you are choosing to walk away from your heritage, your family, and your faith. I do not want to walk away from my faith, Sarah argued. I just want ... I want to draw. I want to be with him. Cannot have both, the bishop said sadly. Oil and water do not mix. If you marry him, you will be unequally yoked. You will live in his world, with his electricity, his television, his noise, and your children. Your children will not know the German. They will not know the peace of the plain life. They will be lost to us. The ultimatum was clear. Stop seeing him, confess your sin, burn the drawings, or leave. Sarah went to her room. She pulled the drawings from under the mattress. She looked at the sketch of her father's hands. She looked at the sketch of the sycamore tree. She lit a match. She held the flame to the corner of the paper, but she couldn't do it. She blew the match out. To burn them felt like burning her own skin. That night, a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the farmhouse. Lightning illuminated the fields in stark strobe light flashes. Sarah lay in bed, listening to the rain hammer against the tin roof. She thought of Lucas. He would be worried. He wouldn't know why she hadn't come back to the woods. She made a decision. It wasn't a decision made with her head. It was made with her blood. She got up. She didn't pack a bag. A bag meant she was planning. This was not a plan. This was a break. She dressed in her dark dress, but she didn't put on her shoes. She carried them. She crept down the stairs. Every creak of the wood sounded like a scream. She passed her parents' bedroom door. She could hear her father's heavy breathing. A pang of agonizing guilt twisted in her stomach. I am killing them, she thought. By leaving, I am killing their hearts. She reached the kitchen. She stopped at the table. She needed to leave something, not a drawing. Words. She took a piece of paper and a pencil. Dat, Mem, I love you. Love God. But I cannot be the daughter you need me to be without cutting out the parts of me that God gave me. I have to find out if the light out there is the same as the light in here. Please forgive me, Sarah. She left the note under the sugar bowl. She opened the back door and stepped into the storm. The rain soaked her instantly. The mud sucked at her bare feet. She put on her shoes and ran. She ran to the road. She ran to the spot where the cell service began, a mile down the road. She had a small burner phone Lucas had given her just in case. She had never turned it on. She turned it on now. Her wet fingers slipped on the keys. She dialed his number. "Lucas," she gasped when he answered. "Sarah, my God, where are you?" "I've been driving past your lane every day." "I'm at the crossroads," she sobbed. "By the big oak. Come get me, please." "I'm coming. Stay there, I'm coming." Act 5. The decision and final minutes. The consequence waiting for the car was the longest 10 minutes of Sarah's life. She stood under the oak tree, shivering violently. She looked back toward the farm. She couldn't see the house through the rain and the dark, but she could feel it. She could feel the warmth of the wood stove. She could feel the security of the routine. Tomorrow they would wake up. Her mother would slice the bread. Her father would milk the cows. And her chair would be empty. The grief hit her so hard she almost doubled over. This wasn't just leaving a house. It was an amputation. She was cutting herself off from the community that had raised her, loved her, and protected her. If she got in that car, she might never sit at that table again. If she was baptized later in another church, or if she simply lived English, she would be shunned if she ever tried to return without full repentance. The headlights cut through the rain. The silver car slewed to a stop on the wet pavement. Lucas jumped out. He didn't care about the rain. He ran to her and wrapped his arms around her. He felt solid. He felt real. "You're freezing," he said, pulling her toward the car. Sarah planted her feet. She looked at him. "Lucas, if I go, I can't go back." "I know," he said. He framed her wet face with his hands. "I know what you're giving up. I promise you, Sarah, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it worth it. We'll build a life. You can paint. You can be free." "Freedom is heavy," she whispered. "We'll carry it together." She looked back one last time. The lightning flashed, illuminating the silhouette of the barn. It looked like a fortress that kept the world out, but also kept the soul in. "Okay," she said. The word was swallowed by the thunder. She got into the car. The interior was warm. It smelled of Lucas coffee and old paper. He got in the driver's seat and looked at her. "Ready?" "No," she said honestly. "Drive." The car pulled away. Sarah watched the side mirror. She watched the darkness of the farm fade away until it was just blackness. She didn't look forward. She kept her eyes on the rearview mirror until the tears blurred her vision so badly she couldn't see anything at all. 5 years later, the gallery in downtown Lancaster was bright, airy, and modern. The walls were white, pristine. On the center wall hung a series of charcoal and watercolor pieces. They were striking. They depicted scenes of rural life, but with a haunting, ethereal quality. A pair of rough hands holding reins, a lonely sycamore tree, a lantern glowing in a dark room. The artist stood in the corner. Sarah wore a simple gray dress, not Amish, but modest. Her hair was cut to her shoulders, loose and waving. She wore a silver wedding band on her finger. Lucas stood beside her, holding the hand of a 3-year-old girl. "It's a great turnout, Sarah," Lucas said softly. "It is," she smiled. But the smile did not reach her eyes fully. She looked at the door. She always looked at the door. Every time the bell chimed, her heart jumped. She hoped with a desperate, childish hope that she would see a man in a straw hat and a woman in a black bonnet. She hoped they would walk in, look at her art, and understand. She hoped they would see that she hadn't left them. She had just followed the light, but the door opened, and it was just another tourist couple. Sarah turned back to her painting, the one titled The Empty Chair. She was happy. She loved Lucas. She loved their daughter. She had her art. She had the world. But late at night, when the city noise faded, Sarah would lie in bed and close her eyes. And in the silence, she could still hear the rhythm of the buggy wheels. She could smell the hay. She could feel the phantom weight of the prayer covering on her head. She had crossed the line. She had found her voice, but she had learned the hardest truth of all. You can leave the plain life, but the plain life never truly leaves you. It stays in your blood, a quiet, steady ache, reminding you that every freedom has a price. And as she looked at her painting of the farmhouse, Sarah knew she was still paying it.